Hello everyone and welcome to another Atomic Mass Transmissions Live. It's a glorious Wednesday and I am happy to be here. We've got a big project on the plate for today. Not only are we going to be revealing for the first time ever the final product ready Gauntlet fighter for X-Wing, I'm also going to get to try my hand at doing a fun repaint of this ship. But I do have the standard one that's going to hit the shelves here early next year. For everybody to take a look at. This just came in, so it's pretty exciting. So I'm going to flip this off of me, and we're going to see how this fantastic ship looks. So you can already see that this is very, very large. This is the standard color scheme. That is going to show up on store shelves again. So this is very stock, like just the general one. But because X-Wing obviously has the opportunity to do some really cool repaints, customize your ships and make them your very own, I wanted to take today, because we had this in, we've got some extras. I've primed one up and we're just going to have fun and throw on some brand new colors for it. Right now I'm thinking very much that I want to do something evocative of Maul and his Maul DeLoreans. So here is my, get my light over here, now that I don't have to worry about the glare off of the box. So here's my primed and prepared Gauntlet. So all I did to get this prepared was I took the standard one, exactly the one we just saw in the final product packaging, and I hit it with the airbrush. I did a light coat of dark gray and then light gray, and so we're ready to go. I'm not going to paint it pink. I mean, I'm going to use a color that is part of pink though, because I was thinking red and black as my primary colors here. Again, I'm really excited to run Maul as one of the pilots for the Gauntlet, and I also imagine that I'll put it in my Rebellion Force quite a bit, Ezra being one of the pilots for it as well. Who can run it with the Rebels. So they kind of use a similar style of ship, which is heavily evocative of red. I'm going to do a bit different from the standard custom scheme though, because I just kind of want to like riff and have fun today, and well, I could pull out some reference and try to follow it. It's going to be my own Gauntlet, so I'm not too afraid of like just doing some wild stuff. So I'm going to start off probably doing the reds. And I'm going to kick things off with a little Mayhem Red. So we're just going to get going. There was, I want to say, the dial for this ship, as well as several of the other cards that come with it, were revealed during its announcement at Mini Stravaganza. This is one of those fantastic X-Wing products that we at Atomic Mass are just getting across the finish line. The vast majority of the work was done previously at Fantasy Flight, especially the rules development, the pilot selection, all of that stuff. We did, however, get the opportunity when these ships showed up to be the ones to work on doing the paint masters based off of the original concepts that were done before it. So Tony, the one, the only Tony Konashek, who you hear on streams quite a bit, was actually the mind behind doing the paint masters for the factory. For the Gauntlet and several of the other ships, including the Razor Crest as well, which we showed off at Mini Stravaganza. So the final product is very much based off of a lot of his loving care in replicating the colors from the reference and getting everything ready to go. And of course, I've taken all of that hard work done by everyone, covered it up because I want to do my own. To me, that's just fun. I love personalizing my X-Wing squadrons. I do always keep some stock, but you know, you always wind up, like I'm planning on having probably 2 Gauntlet fighters. You wind up with so many X-Wings, Y-Wings, TIE fighters, all of that. There's no reason not to just go in there and, you know, have a little fun. Crafting some unique colored squadrons, or happen to like blue squadron pilots or something like that a lot. It can be pretty neat to go in and recolor the squadron markings to match whatever your preferred play versions are. The very first X-Wing things I did on stream was actually a repaint for the Eta 2 for Aayla Secura. We did some V19 Torrents. That's been one of my favorite Republic squadrons to run because it's all cohesive on the tabletop and it just looks nice. It makes me so happy. I need to go in and do an Ahsoka Tano next. I haven't gotten to that repaint. Plummer has an amazing Ahsoka for his Rebels in an A-Wing that just looks fantastic. The Gauntlet, even though it looks like it absolutely should be an epic ship, is not an epic ship. It is the I mean, it's a little difficult. The Ghost definitely has more heft to it. The Gauntlet is pretty slim, but it is super broad and big. But it is easily one of, if not the largest X-Wing ship for Standard. But it is certainly, and the wings do go up and down. So you can pivot wing. Yeah, if you want to see the stock, I can go back to it. It's not hard. Let's see. There's the stock color scheme that's going to come. This is the actual packaging and everything. This is the bulk sample. So, but it does have the pivot wing, so the wings do pivot up and down. This part, the hull, the main body does not spin like we see in the show, though. So choices had to be made. So the pivot wing was kept, and the spinning hull was sacrificed for production's sake and all of that other stuff. But the wings going up and down do make it a little more friendly when you get into close proximity and maybe have some overlaps and stuff, because this ship takes up a phenomenal amount of the table space. It is super big. You know, there was a lot of, I like to compare this one a little bit to Icarus. Like, it is as close to the sun as I think you want to fly in standard X-Wing before you're just like, nope, this is too much. We've gone a bit too far. Right now I'm just working on blocking out my colors, so my coverage isn't going to be perfectly smooth, and that's okay. Because I'm kind of just like freehanding and thinking of this design, I'm using a lot of the ship design and detail to kind of guide what I'm doing. But one of the reasons I wanted to start with red first is that red will be really easy to block out with black, but it's not so much easy the other way. So if I was to start with the blacks and then be like, oh, I wish I had done this part in red, that would be a bad time. Because it would just take more coats. Not that I couldn't do it, but it would take a lot more coats of red to get back to it. But here, like, I could honestly have started with the entire ship sprayed with the airbrush or just painted with a big brush red, and then just gone through and like blocked out anything I wanted to be black, and that could have worked really well too. Because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it yet, I just started like I do with everything, kind of blank slate. And we're just going to play and have fun with it. So, yeah, this ship is super slick. The cockpit always makes me feel a little weird because, like, the design of the canopy and everything just always struck me as odd based on how many people like can sit in it. It's very much designed like a solo interceptor fighter, where you have like the canopy this way. It's like, I guess like two people sit side by side there, kind of like an airline pilot. I don't know. For some reason, it's just weird to me. I just always feel like it should be a little different. But that's just me being odd. We don't really have a spot on website for like paint suggestions. Really, any acrylic hobby-based paint will work. You can also, if you want to just start off in a very different way. Oil paints do work really well on miniatures, and they have a very different kind of like prep, and you do have to use thinners and stuff, which can be pretty harsh. So they're not the simplest to get into, but if you do already do oil painting and stuff like that, there's some fantastic tutorials on how to do. See, look at that. Swivel wing to the rescue here. There's some fantastic tutorials about how to apply oil paints to your miniatures and that kind of stuff. So there's not really one technique or paint line to rule them all, but acrylics are definitely the easiest and the most popular. They're also the most readily available. So if your store does do miniatures gaming and stuff, you're probably going to find that they also carry some line of hobby paints. We like Scale 75s and Vallejos here in the office. We use those quite a bit on stream. For example, the Mayhem Red that I'm using right now is Scale 75's color. But it's always good to go out and just experiment and try different paints. Every single paint's going to work differently from different lines. And as you find colors that you like, stick with them and then start using them in combination. Because the beautiful thing about acrylics as well is that you can mix and match them from all the different lines and it doesn't really make a difference. In fact, you know, it's a lot like any kind of tool, not taking advantage of the proliferation of options out there to finding the ones that work best for you and the ones that you like. The colors, every line has different colors as well. So just be willing to go out and, you know, try different stuff. You can't really go wrong, again, with anything that you'll find in the hobby store, though. Any of the major brands that you'll find there are all very high quality. Just don't go too nuts. I always like to suggest, you know, when you go in, look for the primary colors. So get a good red, get a good blue, get a good green, yellow, that kind of stuff. But then from there, think about, you know, like, what are you painting? Are you going to paint a very specific, like, are you painting something from X-Wing? Like, you're just painting Rebel ships. And do you want all of your Rebel ships to have some kind of teal or sea green for the squad markings? Find that color in whatever line looks best for you and pick that one up. If you're going to be painting a lot of like Rebel troopers, make sure you get some good browns and khakis and things like that. You're going to be painting a lot of stormtroopers, invest in some more whites and some good cool blue grays and things. Build your collection over time. The last thing you want to do is start with every paint under the sun, because while it sounds like that's a great idea, one, it's going to be really expensive. Two, it's completely unnecessary because you're not going to use. I have so many paints that I use like once in a blue moon that I've just accumulated over time. And when I need them, I'm really happy that I don't have to like mix the color or anything. But honestly, I would never recommend somebody get them, you know, like the colors that I keep in my toolbox and always on my, like always in front of me on my desk instead of on the shelf, in the storage shelf, are just very different. And, you know, projects will dictate that a little bit, and then personal preference will dictate that. I use purples all the time. I love painting with purples. I also do a lot of painting with red, because red is just such a strong, you know, aggressive color. So I do have quite a few reds that stay out all the time, and then blues. I'm a big fan of blue color schemes, so a lot of my stuff, like my Imperial Army that I just painted in May, is all blues. Using Huldra Blue, which is a blue from scale that I really, really like. Blue is also super useful for blacks and how you highlight black and all this stuff. So there's a whole lot of like considerations that you want to make when it comes to which paints you pick up. Some of that is going to be defined based on what you're trying to paint. But don't feel like you need every color. You know, don't go out. You can go out and buy the mega set right away. But I think it's a lot more advisable and a lot easier if you start small, start concise for what you need, and then pick things up over the way. Because you might find out, you know, I like this paint line okay, but I think this paint line would be better. Or maybe, you know, you get really into something else, and now you don't want bold fantasy colors. You want more realistic, like hobby scale colors, you know, things that modelers would use for World War II dioramas or model trains or things like that, more subdued colors. And even scale, you know, a lot of these brands that do tons and tons of paint, like Scale 75, they have fantasy and game colors, which are very different pigment-wise and color-wise compared to their normal like Scale 75 range, which is a lot more subdued, a lot more natural colors. So as you define and create your painting style, you're going to find that you like different things. And so locking yourself into like one color scheme right out the gate, you know, let yourself explore. Date before you marry, as it were, kids. Date before you marry. We'll be talking about Adepticon plans next Thursday. I don't know maybe BK's answered this, but I don't know of any specific plans to be discussing Adepticon next Thursday. I do know that next Thursday's stream will feature Plumber and myself, and we're going to be showing off some X-Wing play, kind of catching up on where we last left off. So there's going to be a look at the core rules. We're going to, I guess it kind of matters for Adepticon, we are going to be showing off one of the new competitive scenarios that will be in the new tournament packet. Spoiler alert. That will be launching at the start of next year. It will be our last stream for the year as well. So we're going to send things off with a bang. X-Wing gets the top slot. That should be pretty fun and exciting. And we'll have more information on, where we are at the development with the 2.5 changes and the rule stuff and all that from our last kind of foyer and the things that we talked about during November before the Thanksgiving break. It should be a good time. So if you're interested at all in X-Wing, I'd say check it out. We're looking forward to showing off a bunch of the stuff that we've been working on, and kind of a preview and a roadmap for the future and when to expect everything to be coming out officially next year. And I believe there will be a Razor Crest making an appearance next week as well, both on the hobby stream. Next Wednesday, Dallas Kemp will be painting the Razor Crest in some new Scum Squadron color. So he's making up his own Scum Squadron for X-Wing. So I don't know what the final color scheme is. I don't even know if he knows what the final color scheme is, but he's going to be throwing that color scheme down on a Razor Crest. And then the following day, I don't know if we'll play with Dallas's Razor Crest. I doubt he'll get it done in time, but we will have a Razor Crest flying in action as we do our big X-Wing gameplay discussion stream. So, a fun way to cap off a exciting and wild. Put that down. We're into the Kabuki mask right now. I'm kind of liking it, but I don't think we're going to stick with it. 2021. I can't believe the year is almost over. It's nuts. I feel like there's so much left that we haven't done. And even though we'll be right back to it, a lot of us are taking 2 weeks off at the end of the month for break, well-deserved rest. Can't be prouder of the folks that I work with. Everyone's worked just so hard over the year, and I'm really proud of everything that we've been able to accomplish, and be happy to work with such a talented group of people. And they all definitely deserve a nice, chunky end-of-year break. Because, oh boy, do we have a lot to do next year, too. A lot of exciting stuff. Knock this stuff out. Let's listen. I'm getting quiet here because I'm just thinking about where I want to go next with my reds. Oh, asymmetrical paint job. That's bold. I'll be honest. I don't know if I'm confident enough. I don't know if I'm bold enough for asymmetrical paint jobs. I'm definitely going to go symmetrical on this, just because I'm not sure if my artistic eye is up to the challenge of taking something that is very symmetrical and straight-lined, like a spaceship, and doing a really solid asymmetrical thing with it. But asymmetry, when done well, absolutely can just be so eye-catching. It's funny, we always talk about, we work on making characters, and you work on a lot of famous faces and stuff with Star Wars, all the likenesses, and just the people in general. And symmetry is definitely something that you don't really want, because nature and people are largely not symmetrical. There's always slight imperfections or differences. And that's what makes something look real versus something looking fake. And so symmetry is kind of a dirty word in a lot of ways until you get to something that's manufactured like a Gauntlet or a Starfighter, things like that. But the Danish symmetry can definitely be a trick to make technology or construction look radically different and more natural. Races that have found equilibrium with their natural habitat and that kind of stuff. You did not see a size comparison. I don't have a ghost next to me. There's one in the dev office, but I did not bring it. So maybe if one Dallas Kemp is listening, he can go grab it and bring it in. But this is bigger. We've zoomed out more on this thing than I think I have for anything else so far. Oh, I hear the door moving. Look, there's the Millennium Falcon. That works. Here you go. There's the Millennium Falcon size comparison. So, yeah, obviously, the Gauntlet is a very big boy. It uses an epic base, but it just uses the large ship base for play, because it's not an epic ship. It's absolutely playable, like we kind of discussed earlier. For those who are just joining us, it is 100% playable in standard X-Wing. It comes with pilots and ship cards for all of the factions, not including, I guess, the sequel trilogy. So not all the factions, most of the factions. So it includes Separatist, Galactic Republic, Rebellion, Galactic Empire, and Scum as far as its options currently in the package. So it's a really great ship if you happen to play a couple of different factions in X-Wing or anything like that. Pretty much everybody gets to enjoy this ship, as long as you're not running around with Rey and Kylo and friends. We haven't, as far as I know, and again, this was designed, developed, and worked on before the transition happened last year in November, so it wasn't there for all the meetings and the discussions about it, but as far as I'm aware, we don't have any info that this ship serves significantly in the sequel timeline trilogy. So maybe it got phased out, maybe there's a few flying around, we just haven't seen them yet, but it's not very common. Not common enough that it wound up getting ship and pilot cards for First Order and Resistance anyway. Tried to convince Tony to come on here and paint one, since he was the guy who painted the master for the production one, along with the Razor Crest, a bunch of other ships that are going to be coming out next year. But he's only a voice off camera, you know. I think it actually is smaller than scale still, similar to some of the other ships in X-Wing. But even with that said, it is still a massive, massive chunk. The funny thing about it is it's like really big, you know, width and length, but it doesn't. Oh, he's come back with a ghost. Look at you go. All right.
I'm watching.
I know. We got a Millennium Falcon, but now we have a ghost. But of course, it's a super slender ship from the profile, right? There's like nothing to it. This is about it. This little crew compartment's about it. But you turn it this way, and it's just like, oh my gosh, it's massive. Maul does fly one around in Rebels. I don't necessarily know if in the Clone Wars show itself we ever see Maul fly one around, but I know that he did in other official media. during that timeline. So he is one of the pilot ships, or one of the pilot cards that you get with the ship as a scum pilot. I'm thinking here. Yeah, I think we're just gonna do this. I think we're gonna go whole hog on this part right here. And make all these panels red, and then once I've blocked this out, I'll grab that ghost and we can see it next to a ghost as well. I mean, this thing's so big, I barely even have to worry about getting off camera because it takes up the whole camera. Like I said, I don't think I've ever zoomed out quite as much and still been as close as I am with this today. Get that black in there later. And then we'll just make up our line here. Call that about good. We'll do a little freehand on where our lines begin and end. Should be fine. Again, this is why I started with my lightest color, and I'll work to my darkest color. Because everywhere where I get a little sloppy, or I change my mind about where my line should begin or end. Like for instance, if I went all the way to there. If I went all the way to the edge, but then I decided, oh, I want this line to come across as much as possible. Covering that up with my black is going to be way easier than trying to do it the other way, where I change my mind and say, oh, I really wish the red was there, but I put black there. And it will depend on like what colors you're using too, you know. If I wasn't doing black, but say I was doing like purple and blues, it really wouldn't matter which color was where, because they'd wind up kind of being very similar in terms of their ability to cover one or the other. But blue and yellow, well, you definitely want to make sure that that yellow goes down first, because that blue is going to cover right over that yellow. Any kind of warm color typically is going to have trouble covering over a cooler color. Okay, I think that's a pretty good roadmap for where we're going next. Boop. So there it is next to the ghost. Ugh, they're so big it's hard to get them both in frame. So of course the difference here is when you go to the profile, the ghost is just so much more chunky. But of course, when you look at them from the top down, the Gauntlet is just a big old massive handprint. So there you go. All right. This is where the airbrush would really come in handy, honestly. Like, there aren't a lot of things where I go, I'd probably just airbrush this. But if we had the setup, I would be airbrushing this Gauntlet right now, because it is that big. It is airbrush worthy. And even my mediocre skills at the airbrush would have a pretty easy time knocking out these different panels with it, because it is just so large. Whoop. But I think we're almost there. And we can move on and we can get some blacks on there, start knocking that out. What's going on? It stays on the peg? It's pretty tight on the peg. I mean, unless you mean the base. But, you know, it's a solid chunky connection. And then of course it uses the sturdier Epic style stand. So, ooh, cordless airbrush. That's interesting. Yeah, hopefully we've We're going to be doing some office expansion here because we keep growing, and that's been amazing and stuff. But I'm hoping that in our new space, we might actually wind up having a little airbrush station so we can have the opportunity, though I don't know if we'll use it a ton, to do a bit more airbrushing on the hobby streams and talk a bit more about that process and maybe make, bigger projects like this a little more exciting to watch. Because honestly, this stage, especially if I was trying to do the bottom and the top, we'd be here for the rest of the day almost. But for this one, I just kind of want to block out the idea, and then we'll work on it. Maybe we'll work on it again in a future stream, and we'll take it to that next step where we get like the colors solid, go back in and do everything else. We did do the Trident. Actually, I did a repaint of. I didn't do a repaint. I did a hobby stream where we kind of took it and we took what was there from the factory and we like blinged it up. So we turned the golds into actual golds, and we did a couple other things. And then Dallas Kemp actually did one. Our creative director Dallas, he did a whole repaint of the Trident. You should still be able to find those on the YouTube channel, and maybe they're still on Twitch. I don't know how long Twitch archives stuff. But those we did back in March, I want to say. March, April, right around when the Trident released. So time is so meaningless this far into the year. So you can definitely find those. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed kind of going through and just like, it's an epic peg. So it's much, I don't know how much higher it is than the normal one, but it's substantially like taller. And then of course, again, you can do this. You can pivot wing up. If you need to. Okay, let's take a look. I think I'm pretty happy with the amount of reds on this boy at the moment, so yeah. Let's go in and knock out some blacks. I'm actually going to do this, I think. Come on. Come over like that. Just kind of do a little fake freehanding on the lines just to change it a little bit. Come over here. How do I want to do that? I'm going to come down this way. And again, I'll clean up these lines with the black. So that's kind of the nice thing about it is, when you're doing kind of your own freehanding, on panels like this, you can let the panel lines be your guides, but also, as long as you remember to follow the advice of lighter color first, darker color next, when you go back in, you can go in and obviously like fix anything that spills over. It doesn't quite look right. See, I said I was done with the red, and now I'm just like, well, what about more red, though? But what if we did more? Actually, do these little vents. I think that'll look. I'll make it look like it's got angry eyes, kind of. Boop. Boop. There. All right, onto the black. Yeah, now I just have to do the bottom in the same way, too. It's true. I will be honest, I often cheat when I do X-Wing repaints. I might not be able to get away with this one, but because you only see the ship like this, I will very much like muddy the bottom and just like be like, it's in shadow. Even though space doesn't work like that. To be fair, space doesn't work like it does in Star Wars anyway, so I think it's fine. All right. I'm just going to take some Decay Black, and I'm going to mix in a little bit of Anthracite Gray, because I don't want a super dark. I don't want like a pure black. I kind of want something on the in-between, because it'll make shading and highlighting a little easier. And I am going to be doing a blue-black for this, so this kind of mixture of color I think will work out pretty well for what I want. Anthracite could have used a little bit more shaking, but that's okay. We'll make it work. And then we'll just go in and we'll start knocking out some of these sections with our black. So for instance, we know that we want, oh, that's definitely needs an extra shake. Rough. Sometimes if your paint does that, it just means that you haven't agitated the pigment and the binder enough. And I do notice that scale 75 paints do this a lot, depending on the color. So you just have to go back and give the bottle a really good shake to get those materials to mix better. A reminder of what the originals look like in Clone Wars. There you go. One more time. That's what we started with. This is where we're going. Very different. Started. Going. Yeah. Like it. He's back! What's this? Is this Tony's original one?
No, that's...
Oh, this is just one out of the box? Sure. So there it is outside of the clamshell, so you can kind of see. Whoop.
I don't know why I'm taking it back.
I don't know why you're taking it back either, but you're here. You're just hanging out.
I was excited.
That's cool. I'm excited too. Well, if you mean like the finished production mini, that was it. You saw it. That's the one. I mean, it's the same one that's in the box packaging that I was just showing, basically. It just happens to be one of the paint samples that came outside of packaging. So, Cath Scarlet Feather, I like that. I think that works for sure. So here we want to be a little more careful about how we block in those colors. And again, the name of the game here is patience. It's not going to go smooth the first coat, even though we're doing black. So if it looks splotchy or you got brush stroke lines or anything like that, that's fine. Better to do 2 or 3 thin coats than it is to do 1 super thick coat. All right, so we know we're going to do that. We'll come back over here and we'll do this one. It's nice not to be stuck on that swivel like normal with the character so that I can spin and turn and get the right angle. Part of being really successful at brush control is just learning which way you can run the brush that feels really natural, and typically that's towards you. It's a lot easier to pull a brush towards than away. So maneuver the miniature so that you're always working towards your benefit. So spin it, turn it upside down, do all that stuff. Whatever you have to do to give yourself the best control. Went a little bit over there, but that's okay. We'll clean that up later. Is what you should do. And that's why having a nice workbench or station where you can keep your arms up, like my arms are firmly planted on the table, like that, it's ready to go. Look, there's a reason that statement is so popular. It's not, it is just strong advice. You should always do a couple of thin coats of paint versus one thick coat of paint. If you were working with oil paints, you might be able to get away with like one thick coat of paint because that's more of a subtractive process if you're truly oil painting. But even then, I think your day is going to be a lot easier if you go a little thinner than what you think you might need. But yeah, the best phrases or taglines are often the ones that are just true. Who's going to argue with that? You really can't. It's like, well, that's just good advice. I guess you could just be, argumentative. You'd be like, somebody tells you 2 thin coats, you're like, no, 4 thick coats. You're not making a fast food milkshake. Thicker is not better. So well, I'm glad that you're liking the black and the red. I think we got a lot of work to go on it, but this comes back to the fact that X-Wing minis look great, and there's a lot of care and work taken with them to make them look as amazing as they do right out of the box. But that shouldn't stop you from, if you want to take the opportunity and personalize. And I've seen some amazing stuff done by folks in the community since I started playing way back, when the game really released at Gen Con. I think I was seeing repaints of it shortly after that from people who were just doing incredible stuff. And I think that's one of the joys of this game especially is that, a lot of the times in games like Legion or the other ones we make, painting is a bit more of a requirement because no one wants to push around boring gray plastic on a tabletop when we're here for the immersion and the beauty of the hobby miniatures. The fact that X-Wing is able to look so good right away, but then also be just as open to personalization and ownership and all of that stuff for the people who are inspired and want to give it a try. Like, as they would say, chef's kiss. That's just fantastic. And I obviously paint non-X-Wing stuff all the time as well. But I also just love the fact that I can go in and do things like we talked about earlier on the Trident or a couple other times that we've done. Dallas did a great repaint of a T-70 X-Wing, I think it was, not too long ago, where he didn't repaint the whole X-Wing. He just went in and, he updated the squad markings to be, I think he went from red to blue, if I remember correctly. And a couple of really simple things, and the end result was phenomenal. Then, I talked about Michael Plummer's my favorite A-Wing repaint he's done is Ahsoka Tano. He did the whole A-Wing to look like Ahsoka Tano's Leiku, and he's got the orange and the markings and all of this stuff. It's nuts, and it looks so cool. So any of that stuff, you can go as crazy with it or as simple with it as you want, and you're still going to wind up with just an amazing looking squadron on the tabletop. Just focusing as I come in around that corner here, building this stuff. Big ships like this, it might take a little longer, but even taking that factory out of the box color scheme and punching it up, maybe you want the blues to be a bit more poppy. Maybe you want the cream color to be more white. you can really change the look and the feel of a ship to truly be your own with not a ton of effort. And I think that's pretty cool too. They're also just, if you want to work on freehand, my gosh, X-Wing ships are amazing for that. Because you can just dive right in there, and they have so many, like this guy here, so many big, broad, nice, smooth surfaces that you get to play around with. Dallas did a fantastic little chibi Kit Fisto during the last mini extravaganza on our ARC 170 that was voted on by the community. We're watching social media and engaging with us during that event at the time. And it looks great. He's just like a little winky face on the side of the ship, some nose art. I assume that it should be up for pre-order soon. It is the last that I heard. And granted, I am not the last line of release date information, unfortunately, but BK is in there. So the last that I'd heard, and the plan was that it was going to release alongside the Razor Crest and the Pride of Mandalore pack, which if those are up for pre-order right now, then I would expect that this guy, gal ship, ships are usually she's, so that's what I'll use, that this big, beautiful Gauntlet fighter will be up for pre-order right alongside them soon. There is, of course, like everything, there's always that approval step before something can go up for sale. Our fabulous partners have to take a look at the final thing and say, yes, we love it, you nailed it. So it might just be that they're waiting on that before it goes up to pre-order. It might be that it just hasn't gone up yet. I don't know. And of course, there's the global shipping crisis, which may have reared its ugly head again. So, but yeah, it's going to be the original goal for the release was that it would be a very special Mandalorian themed month. So along with that, you know, having the Gauntlet, having the Pride of Mandalore pack, which is, I think, Michael Plummer's most favorite pack ever. I've never met a person who loves Fang fighters more than Mr. Plummer. And now that he can Fang fighter in pretty much any faction he wants an X-Wing, that man was so excited. It's been fun. It was certainly a really big moment of responsibility to make sure that all of these products that were worked on before we kind of came into the picture and, you know, everything shifted over to where we are now. We got across the finish line in the various stages they were handing us to. A lot of them, you know, like with the Gauntlet and the Razor Crest and everything else, all the print stuff was done and locked. Our role in the process was primarily getting the miniatures across the finish line. So again, working on the paint masters, working with the factory to make sure that the paints turned out the way that the concept docs and stuff that had set forth the colors, and then Tony's work on doing the paint masters were all correct. And that process is definitely arduous. It's tough. There's a lot of back and forth because, you know, if you've ever tried to match a paint color or a color that you saw somewhere that someone else did, even if they tell you exactly how they got it, if If you don't have access to the same paints, it can be very, very challenging. And of course, when you're separated across an ocean and stuff like that, the colors available to people and the techniques and all that stuff are very different. So it's a lot of good dialogue that happens about how to achieve the right results and, you know, what that color needs to be to match the LFL reference. And it is a challenge. But then you get through it, and eventually a package shows up at the office, and you open it up, and it's all the team's hard work laid out in final form. You kind of get to look at it and say, oh my gosh, it's beautiful, it's perfect, it's real. Now I'm going to take an airbrush, blast all that paint off of it, and I'm going to go do my own thing on stream. Like a true monster. I've been watching the chat very much. So this scheme here is largely based off of the Super Commando colors that we see like Maul's Maldalorians using. Although, as I stated from the front, I'm not using the exact reference, so there's definitely differences. I have way more black, and my kind of intention right now, although it may change based on how I'm feeling as I continue to work on this, is to have no white left. But if you look at like the card art and stuff and the reference, there's definitely that yellow cream kind of color that's on the standard. That's on the standard Gauntlet is certainly used pretty prevalently on Maul's ship and everything else. So I am kind of just making it up as I go along, even though I've been inspired by... It's inspired by a true story. How about that? This paint scheme is inspired by a true story, not actually a true story. But I do want somebody to look at it and immediately think, you know, Maul, Maldalorian, Super Commando, Season 7, all that good stuff. Rook, Cast, Gar Saxon. And honestly, by the end of it, it'll probably even evoke a little bit of the Galactic Empire Mandalorians, the Super Commandos from there that are under Viceroy. I think he's a Viceroy, Gar Saxon, during the Rebellion era, that clash with Clan Ren and Sabine and all that. So there's definitely some of that flavor going on too. We'll just knock this out. How much time do we have left? Oh my gosh, we only have 4 minutes. Well, maybe we'll get this wing done, and then we can use our imaginations to think about what this will look like when I finally get done with all of my blocking out. And then I think I will have to come back and work on this more so that we can see the whole thing come across. But my gosh, it's so much to paint in just an hour. I feel pretty good about where we've gotten. So yeah, it's an epic peg. So this is what comes with it. It comes with an epic peg. I pulled this right out of the box, actually. So here, I can, boop. So that's the peg. Here's the base. See if I can be smart enough to clip it in while I'm on camera. Probably not. There we go. Wow. So there you go. There were several cards spoiled during the X-Wing This Is the Way panel at Mini Stravaganza. So you should go check that out. I believe we also showed off the ship dial. It was a long time ago. But, you know, it's there were several things shown off for it. So you can go take a look at that if you want to take a look at that. BK did mention earlier in the stream, for people who are asking, that we should be seeing some previews of cards coming out next week. So that should be exciting as well. For anyone who wants to see how this bad boy works, I'm going to move this light out of my way. I'm going to shift this camera over, maybe. I've blocked my line of sight to the thing. There we go. All right, well, thank you very much for joining me today for this very special Gauntlet-themed painting extravaganza. I look forward to finishing out my block out. So my plan here, BK willing, is I'm going to go take this bad boy home. I will work on getting all of the colors solid and applied, and then what we'll do is we'll come back on a future stream. It won't be next week because next week we're going to have the Razor Crest with Dallas Kemp during this time, 1 p.m. at Wednesday. So if you want to see the Razor Crest, see Dallas Kemp's take on his own Scum Squadron colors, he's going to be doing that. Next Thursday, Michael Plummer and I are going to be throwing down for a game of X-Wing. So if you want to see what competitive scenarios look like, we're going to be playing one of those for next year. Those are going to be dropping in the tournament packet. We're going to talk a lot more about what to expect going forward with rules changes and all that good stuff. Timelines and things as we roll forward. That's also going to be our last stream of 2021, so you should join us anyway just to celebrate one heck of a crazy year. We're going to be there for that. But I will bring this thing back on in the future, hopefully at the start of the new year. We'll work on it some more. We'll get it to a place where it looks really cool, and then hopefully I'll get to fly it on a future stream. Till next time, folks, thank you so much for joining me. Be sure to join us tomorrow. We're going to be playing a Star Wars Legion game as well. So tune in for that. That's going to be at 1 p.m. Pacific. And otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you very much for joining me. Be great to each other, and goodbye.